good morning and great to have you here. Hope remote learning is bearable. I received an email yesterday that school will be online this entire semester. So, cheers to another 3 months of day long Zooms. Today, former FedEx captain Oliver Coolidge is going to explain how to get your private pilot license and the many opportunities the EAA offers for you to achieve your goal. Also, we'll have a Flight Club Aerospace recruitment session after the presentation. Now, without further ado, let me hand it over to Oliver. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you, Anab. Well, how do you get your private license? It's a big question, a big decision. I can mostly tell you how I got mine, which is I had a roommate in college who took me for a ride. He was a private pilot. He took me for a ride, and I said, this is it. This is something I got to do. And I started flying the next year at a little local airport in Southern California. From there, the hobby grew into a vocation, and I became an airline pilot. And that took a little while, but the rest is history, as we say. So how do you do it? I think that what's important to do is just commit. Say, I really want to do this. There may be three routes to do it. One is to be an airport bum, as I call it. Hang around. You can kind of do what Jaden does.
Hello.
And Jaden's been coming out to the airport and bugging us for at least 2 years, helping us build the RV-12, which is behind us. We actually completed the RV-12 last week, and now we're flying it with students. So an airport bum is one answer, and eventually you've got to face the facts that you've got to find money. And hopefully you have some parental help or some way to pull the money together. The best thing to do, absolutely, is to have all the money together, identified, and to fly twice a week until you get your license, maybe even 3 times a week. The fastest way is to do it consistently and such that there's not huge stretches in between your lessons. Otherwise, you spend time reviewing and remembering what you did in the last lesson. But if it's fresh in your mind, then you just progress more rapidly. We're at the airport, as you can tell, so if the background noise gets too loud, we'll have to stop for a minute. Anyway, another way is to, I guess there's a similar way, is to sign up at a flight school. Now, how do you find a good flight school? How do you find the instructor? So the question is, you just go down to your local airport and start looking around. Again, this is most of the way I did it, till you get a ride with someone. An instructor will take you up. This is an introductory flight, which hopefully is a little bit less expensive than the normal instructor plus airplane rental. They'll take you for a ride and get you hooked, or you could fly Young Eagles flights. The EAA offers those once a month here at San Carlos, for instance. You can get a ride if you're under 18 and get a taste of it. Keep coming back. Jaden, what are other ways to get your license?
Meet friends.
Meet friends. You can also go in the military, which is a great way if you are 21 and out of college. Good training. It is a serious commitment. I didn't do that. I've got a lot of friends who were military pilots and airline pilots, but that's another option. So EAA offers several scholarships, which we've been fortunate to be awarded 2 now. Jack Meadow was our first candidate a year ago, and he's almost finished his private. Jaden is our second recipient. Jaden's 16 and he'll be 17 in February. And do you want to tell us something about the Ray Scholarship?
It's basically $10,000, and you're just trying to. It's a boost to help you get your training. Yeah, there's certain time frames you got to meet, so the training is kind of. You got to fly a lot, which is something I like, so it's good for me. Um, yeah, it's a very good opportunity.
Good. So I'm an instructor. I don't call myself a real instructor. I tell these people they can fly with me for a little bit, but then you have to get a real instructor. So this is Star Lozano. There you are. So we'd also have women in aviation. Do you want to say a little something about flying? Hold
You
it.
can do it at any age, but I suggest starting early.
So I've been flying with Star a little bit, and we recently started flying in the RV-12, which has been in basically an EAA project, and then turned into a club, a Flying 12 club. Has purchased the airplane and is using it for flight training and for fun. So we'll show you that in a minute. Um, Sam, would you like to jump on and say a word or two? Sam is the president of the local chapter at San Carlos.
Yeah, thanks very much, Oliver. I'll go into just a little bit of detail of alternative ways that and other things that Oliver didn't cover. One of the things that he did mention was that of the Young Eagles program that we have with EAA. At San Carlos, we would do Young Eagles flights where we take people who are interested in flying, who are under 18, a sort of an introductory flight to kind of help them understand what flying is about by giving them an opportunity to, actually take to the air. And for some people, that's enough, and it's okay. And flying is not for everyone. But for other people, there is a strong desire. So one of the things that, as part of the Young Eagles program, is that it offers ground school training as well. Sporties, that's a company that's pretty well renowned in the aviation world for supplying pilots with both, hardware, software, as well as training. And in order to get your private pilot's license, you need both practical as well as what they call ground school, which is learning the rules, the regulation, and the theory behind flying. Usually it's quite a substantial amount of money to do ground school. And there's various ways of doing that. You can take an actual in-person class, which is the typical way of doing things. You can imagine that one-on-one in-person training is great for ground school, but it can also be relatively expensive. For those who are more interested in doing something, online or, at their own pace, things like the Sporties Ground School are a valid option. Sporties is not just for young pilots. I know other people who are much older also take their classes, and there are also other companies out there. One is King Air, which is or King's Flight School, which is based out in San Diego. They do a bunch of online training as well. So, bottom line, there is a lot of options to get that ground school component for your private pilot license. The other aspect I wanted to touch on is the flight training side of things. As Oliver talked about, you need a flight instructor, you need an airplane, and you need at minimum about 40 hours of actual time in the airplane. Realistically, there are very few people who get their pilot license at 40 hours. It's usually a lot more. I believe the average is about 80 hours before you get your license. And it can be difficult. There's definitely moments in which you feel like you're pushing yourself and you may not be progressing as fast as you want, but it is a process. So, I won't go too much into details of that part of flight training, simply because you can, people who are interested will probably dive into it and look it up. So, but I will talk about the flight training that we're trying to do here at EAA 20. So one of the things that we did was, as Oliver mentioned, build an airplane. And the idea with that is, it would be a great opportunity for members of the club to get together, to have some fun, and to have something at the end of it that could potentially be used to help the local area with a cheap way to fly, and for members to learn how to fly. And so one of the things that we've done is we've built this airplane, and now we are doing flight training in it. Because of insurance regulations and other things, there's only a limited number of people that we can put through this particular platform. So right now, the people who are learning to fly in it are members of EA20 and who have been involved with us for quite some time, either by helping build the airplane or through other activities. And so in the future, if you want to put more people through EA20's flight training, I wouldn't say program, but schedule, we just got to build a few more airplanes. So,
I'll jump in for 1 second, Sam.
Sure.
EAA, of course, is Experimental Aircraft Association, and that's how it was formed originally in the 1950s. But it's really become a very good voice for all of general aviation. General aviation being all of what I call little airplanes. So our local chapter is one of about 1,000 chapters around the country. We are particularly proud because we're a fairly early chapter, number 20 out of 1,000. Back to ground school. There are at least 3 ways to go through ground school. Again, my personal opinion is that it's best to do it in conjunction with your flying. So you're taking flight lessons and attending ground school. And they do, I'll call them sit-down classes, a classroom style, and question and answers, and an instructor leading the class. And that is a very good way to learn, because there's a fair amount of what we call hangar flying, which is just sitting around and talking about maybe what happened on your last flight. You had questions your instructor didn't answer, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one way. Then there are the online courses, which of course are very popular. The Kings are one. There are tons of different. Sporties is another. There's several different operations that do the online course. And they used to have weekend courses, so you could just do a cram course and then on Saturday and Sunday and take your test on Monday. But those are, I don't even know if they're going on anymore, but those just get you through the written test, don't give you quite as much knowledge as you really need to become a good pilot. Sporties?
Yeah.
You tell them about it.
All right, so after you take a Young Eagles flight, we have a logbook, and on the back of the logbook, there's a code. That should give you a free ground school course for sporties. So basically, instead of paying like a flight school or paying online, it's free for you. And then
Have you taken that?
I'm almost done with it.
Almost done with it. Yeah.
And then they give you your written endorsement once you're done with it. Brandon over there took his written yesterday, and he passed.
Oh.
I know that you soloed several weeks ago.
Yeah, it's tough and it's fun, but one thing is money. That's kind of hard if you're not in a scholarship or anything. But you'll find a way to like go flying either way. Even though you have like a little money to no money, you will find at least a job to do to get some money to go flying, which is what I've been doing, and it's working fine for me. So.
Yeah. No, there's always a way if you really want to do it.
You did bring up scholarships, and we've been really fortunate for active members. We've been able to connect them to varying scholarship opportunities. As you mentioned before, Jaden and Jack Meadow are both Ray Aviation Scholarship recipients. Ray Aviation is basically it's a national competition among young people for a $10,000 scholarship, and $10,000 will get you pretty far, if not completing your private pilot's license. So that's one scholarship opportunity which, for those who are interested, I would highly encourage you to apply. Hey, Oliver, I'm going to mute you because there's a lot of background noise. Yeah. So that's one opportunity. Through the local area where, obviously there's less people, there is another scholarship opportunity called the Upwind. And we've also had members from our group win that. And that's been a wonderful thing for local students to help achieve their wings. It's scholarships, especially for young people, are they're not falling off the trees, but they do exist. And so I would encourage you, for those who are interested in flying and for those who may not be as financially able to look into those things. There are scholarships through EAA, through AOPA, which is another organization that promotes general aviation. And for women pilots or pilots to be, there are groups such as the Flying 99s who are also keen on providing scholarship opportunities to young women. Bottom line, there's a lot of opportunity out there that you just have to look and connect and go through the process to apply. With that, I really have nothing else prepared to talk about, and more than happy to answer questions.
I just, I would add by asking Anand how he's doing it.
I have been taking the Sporties online course, but I haven't started flight training. I need to do my driving first.
I saw one question, is our RV-12 available for flight training? And the answer is yes. You can take flight training in the RV-12. You've got to be a member of the group Flying 12, so you'd have to join the club, which is one option. But we have one seat at a time. We think it's going to be available for a student. That's our hope and our wish, to have one student at a time go through the Flying 12 program. So I'm sorry, I got to look at the questions again. What?
So could you talk about the path to a commercial pilot's license?
So again, I turned into an airport bum. I started working at the airport, pumping gas, driving the fuel truck, scraping together money, asking people for rides, and continuing to fly and continuing to take lessons. I actually got my instrument rating after I got my private. So I got my private when I was 19, and I got my instrument when I was 20, and I got my commercial when I was 21. I got my CFI the next year, 22, and worked as a flight instructor. So it's just a matter of how do you get experience? And it's it's always hard to know what to do, what to give advice. But I just say, come to some chapter meetings, which are now Zoom. Come down to the airport, talk to the different flight schools. There are 3 here at San Carlos. There are probably 3 at Palo Alto. I've just been told there are 4 at San Carlos. So it's just a matter of jumping in, getting your feet wet, and talking to people who are like-minded and sort of doing it. Go ahead with questions.
Well, Oliver, I'm going to add to that. I'll give a little bit more formal description of how you get to a commercial pilot's license. The initial step, as we've talked about before, is getting that private pilot's license. You want to get that and not the alternative, which is called a sports pilot license. With a sport pilot license, theoretically, you could learn how to fly, get a sport pilot license with just 20 hours, but it severely restricts you on what you can do, including what type of aircraft you can fly, as well as the days or the time at which you can fly. I believe sport pilots are limited only to daylight VFR, visual flight rules. So basically clear skies. If you're interested in flying for commercially, obviously those limitations aren't going to help you. And so the alternative route is the private pilot license as the first step. Typically what people will do is start getting ratings and endorsements after getting their private pilot license. Things like getting a complex endorsement, which allows you to fly airplanes which are called more complex. They may have an engine that's slightly different, that allows you to adjust different settings, or airplanes that have retractable landing gear. All of these things are making an airplane more difficult to fly. And as a result, the FAA wants you to have some training to allow you to fly that type of airplane. There's complex, there is tail dragger, multi-engine, that's self-evident, an airplane that has more than 2 engines. Basically, you're getting additional ratings so that you could fly more and different types of airplanes that are bigger, more complex, and probably faster as well. All the time you're building hours, and you have to get to a minimum of 250 hours in order to get to start to think about getting a commercial pilot's license. And it takes a long time to get 250 hours. So people will do these other ratings. They'll get their instrument rating as well, which will allow you to fly in more less ideal weather, cloudy days, fog, things like that. And so you're getting to that 250-hour mark, and once you have that, as well as instruction, as well as certain types of flights, like a certain number at night, a certain number that are long distance, things like that, you'll be able to apply for a commercial pilot's license. And the test is just a little bit more difficult than a private's. You have to go through a few more additional demonstrations of skill. But after that, you're a commercial pilot, and that enables you to start using your flying as a way to pay for more flying or to make a career out of it.
Sam, I just want to interrupt. I'm going to introduce my good friend, Roland, who is one of the older members of the chapter, and also a flight instructor or an ex-flight instructor. And
right.
You never completely give it up. But, so when did you start flying, Roland, and how did you learn?
1940, started flying, and 46. Soloed in 1950. I got the flight instructor ready in 51. No, I'm sorry, 52 for the flight instructor. And been flying ever since.
Do you enjoy it?
You bet. Miss it a whole lot. Can't fly anymore and miss it.
Thank you, Roland. So again, before you look to the career path, I'm with Sam. Well, it's basically, you just got to jump in and see what you can find and see how it all works out. We have the Upwind Scholarship is another program that they typically award 4 scholarships each year, and it's a summer program, very intensive training. It's a 9-week program, and at the end of 9 weeks, you have a private license. You can Google Upwind Foundation and you'll find it.
That kind of goes into what Mammoth Lucas was asking. How long is the training? There are programs that will let you do it over the summer. There are also much shorter programs, 14 days, in which it is a very intense 14 days. Usually you'll be coming in already with your ground school already completed, and it's just a matter of building up the hours as well as the flying skills needed to pass the private pilot license test. I don't think we dove in too much into what that test entails. It is usually an afternoon with a flight instructor that's been designated by the FAA to be able to sign off and to basically give people their wings. And I would say it's a pretty intense afternoon. They will do an oral exam and ask you a bunch of questions of knowledge that you should know based on your previous flying and your ground school studies. And if he feels like you have that down, the next step is for you to hop in the airplane with them and to demonstrate what they call minimum standards of skill. And that is examples are landing within or keeping headings within a certain number of degrees, or keeping altitude within a certain number of degrees, demonstrating your ability to make turns, to recover from stalls, as well as other aspects. So, and if you're able to do that good enough, then they will sign you off and get you a license.
Once you get a private pilot license, will I be able to work somewhere to pay for college?
Unfortunately, no. A private pilot license, in general, and this is a generalization. With a private pilot license, you are allowed to basically fly for the fun of it. There are certain things like banner towing or a glider pulling that may be allowed. I'm not sure the details of it, but this is one of the things they really emphasize during your private pilot license training, that you are not allowed to basically make it into a job that allows you to pay for college. You can basically, at most, you can split the cost of flying with someone else. If there are 2 people in the airplane, you can divide it by 2, essentially. But you have to pay your share.
What are some aircraft you could suggest to begin training and flying?
152, it's a basic Cessna 152 or Cessna 172. There's also Piper, makes a Cherokee. Both are perfectly good training airplanes. And then this little RV-12 is a pretty good little trainer if you want something a little more modern. Sam?
For the most part, because you have to find an instructor, that part of your choice will be pretty much done for you. You won't have an instructor usually is associated with the flight school, and that they will have their own fleet of airplanes. All the ones that Oliver mentioned, those are fine platforms. For the very, which I'm not sure if there's anyone here. Some people will buy an airplane to learn how to fly And you know, obviously that's a much more expensive way to go. No.
Well, in the long run, it's actually cheaper if you can buy the airplane and then turn around and sell it for what you paid for it. You get your flying for virtually free, as they say. But
yeah, just a lot of initial upfront cost for an airplane. So, and you know, as Oliver and I know, it's not a cheap, it's not a good, it's not a way to go. So.
Back quickly to the working part of it. Sam's absolutely right. You can't work as a pilot, but you can get plenty of jobs around the airport, washing airplanes, cleaning up the flight school, just helping out at flight schools. Eventually, there's glider towing and things like that, parachute jumping, carrying jumpers. But most of those take a commercial license to really fly for a living.
And sorry to interrupt. I would like to clarify that this is a lot of misconceptions a lot of people have is that you cannot fly airlines just because of a commercial license. That's kind of a commercial license is for like single props or something smaller. If you want to fly the big jets, you need an ATP, I believe, right? And that's at 1,500 hours. And you can reduce that time if you go to a special aviation college.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Ovid. That's true. Once getting a commercial pilot license doesn't mean you get to fly the 777s or the Airbuses with people on board. You need
A320s. Not even the A320s.
Well, if you're from Pakistan, you can sometimes get a job with 200 hours.
When should I begin training?
What was the question?
When should someone begin training?
As soon as possible. Beginning training, you can get a glider license at age 14. You can solo a private pilot. You can solo as a student pilot at age 16. You have to be 16 to solo, and you can get the license at age 17. But if you start at age 14 and you fly once in a while, you'll be way ahead of the game. And to solo on your 16th birthday is kind of a special treat. And then to get your license on your 17th birthday is also a question was how long does it take? And I don't know if we answered that, but it's between 2 months and 20 years. So it really depends how much you can fly, whether you have hand-eye coordination, just, general kind of a student you are. You've got to be able to, meet a certain number of, a good question about female aviators. You've got to know the stuff for the test. There's a lot of information in ground school. This is a Cessna 195, which is a little bit different airplane. This is a 1954 model. They built them from 47 to 54. But this is kind of my personal hobby airplane. In EAA 20, we've got about 4 women aviators. And we've got a number who are kind of dancing around the question, or dancing around joining or not, and so on. But absolutely, women are really welcome, more than welcome, invited, encouraged, etc. Go ahead.
I will mention that in the past, aviation has been somewhat of a male-dominated group. However, that's changing. And there's nothing that prevents a woman from being as good a pilot as a male. So, there really isn't any, physical limitations. In general, the airlines and the society as a whole is really encouraging a more egalitarian, way of flying, where both, females and males are encouraged to participate.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
How much does it cost to get a private pilot license on average?
Well, I would say the number that you get quoted is $15,000. That's retail at a flight school. If you get a scholarship, obviously it doesn't cost you anything. So somewhere in between, and again, it depends, between 2 months and 20 years, how often you fly, how you learn things. So the flight hours now are costing about $150 an hour for a basic Cessna 150. A little bit more for a 172, which is a little bit bigger. And we're flying this Vans RV-12 at $50 an hour because it's very inexpensive. The engine is a Rotax and it uses less gas than the others. So somewhere between nothing and $15,000 or $20,000 for a private pilot's license. I'd say $10,000 would be a hope, but that's not that easy to make it at $10,000. Our 2 race scholarships get a $10,000 award. Yes, there is a membership fee to become a member of Flying 12. That's a small issue because we're basically filled up.
Thank you for taking out the time, Oliver, for an amazing presentation. To everyone else, thank you all for joining. At the EAA, we have many opportunities available for people of all ages to avail, and a few of these include scholarships, building planes, and mentoring. So please shoot us an email at youngaviators@eaa20.org to learn more. If you want to stay updated with the Young Aviators, follow our Instagram at youngaviators1, and all our keynotes will be now posted on our YouTube channel. So I'll put the link in the chat afterwards. And of course, please share with anyone interested.